we should be live. I'm just gonna
Okay, it says it's streaming live on Facebook. Wow.
yay. And I'll just check on Facebook as well. I usually have Facebook on my phone, and then I can see if there's any questions.
Okay.
If you, I don't know if you're going to do that, but if you do, just make sure you sound is down on your phone if you're actually opening.
I think my phone's off, Denise, so it's in a different room. So,
Brilliant.
are you going to record it as a?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I normally do is just take it off Facebook, and then I'll put it on my YouTube.
Okay.
So I don't actually record it on my hard drive, but I just
Okay.
download it from Facebook. Right, just need to come out of there and come back in. Just bear with us while we do the technical stuff. Yes, we are live. Wonderful. Just open that so I can see the comments. Make sure my sound's down. Yeah. Thank you to those who are joining us. I'll just wait for people to arrive. And while they're arriving, I'll just say a little bit about Love Speaks Love, which is it's an online conversation with a guest, and it's a platform to share wisdom, share experience, sometimes ceremony, and it's heart-to-heart conversation. And one of the aims of Love Speaks Love really was to kind of expand hearts, bring people together, build community, and unity consciousness. So it's all working towards that in various ways. And James Boag is my guest this week. And James actually hails from Pickering, which is the town where I am living now. So we've met a few times, and the first time that I met you was actually while I was still living in Australia, and you did one of Mrs. I've forgotten her name, one of the yoga things at Mrs. No, I can't remember her name, but the lady who she used to put on a lot of stuff for you, and it was one of
at Gillian's place.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that was a couple of years before. That was probably about 6 years ago, maybe. So it was actually my mum who introduced me to you.
Yeah.
Because she is one of your biggest fans. She loves your work. And for those that don't know, my mum has actually been teaching yoga for 50 years.
So your mum, Denise, is my oldest student, and she's been teaching yoga longer than I've been alive. So that's really kind of a fun combination.
Yeah. She's been teaching. Is it how long? Let me think. Oh, my maths brains. No, 40. Oh, I don't know. No, 50 years. It is 50 years. Yeah, 51 years she's been teaching yoga.
Yeah.
So back in the day when it wasn't even as cool as it is now. So yeah, James is an internationally known. He teaches yoga globally. He spent a lot of time in India. He also spends a lot of time in Costa Rica. And remind me, I want to ask you where you are there, because I have one lady who will be watching, not on the live, but on the replay, who lives in Costa Rica.
Okay.
So I'll get some information for her as well, how she might be able to see you once you're able to get back there. And you've studied Sanskrit. You do a lot of kirtan as well. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that, to your introduction.
No, I mean, just about Costa Rica, Denise, it's not that I've not spent so much time there. I've been to Costa Rica twice, but the thing about it being a long time is it was that last year when I went there, no, I've been 3 times actually, but last year I spent 75 by the ocean. It was at that point the longest I had been in one place for 12 years. But last week, this week, it has now been Pickering again, because I got back here end of March, and I think it's now 76 or 77 days. And I'm really feeling that feels great. My body's thanking me for it, being in one place. I've been very grateful to be able to go and share the work I love in many different places, and to go regularly to India and to some place I've been going to share regularly in recent years. But I have also been keen to reduce my travel significantly. And lo and behold, it's been, growing food and been very, contained on the earth in one place in recent weeks. And that it feels really good. I'm very, been trying to heed the invitations in this different situation. And I have found the externally imposed restrictions have helped me notice how I have restricted myself with many of my own limiting ideas, let's say. So that's been one of the invitational gifts of this time. It's helped me see things that I maybe I've been running away from them. I've been just too busy or too caught up in the inertia of of a habit that has been asking to be shifted. And so that's one of the gifts of this time.
Yeah, and I think that applies to a lot of people as well. It's all the things that people say they can't do because they've not got time, but kind of people are being forced to reflect inwardly a little bit, really, which is, in my view, is a good thing. Now, what I normally do is I'm just going to do a little visualization to start with, because I like to bring us all into our heart space and connect all of our hearts together. So I'm going to do that. And if anyone wishes to close your eyes, you can do, but if you wish to keep your eyes open, that's fine. And let us take a few deep breaths. And let us breathe in love. Breathing that love into every cell of our bodies. And feeling our beautiful hearts expanding as we breathe love. Breathing love in and breathing love out. And as we connect all of our hearts together, so connecting all of our hearts, all of us watching the show live, all of us watching this on the replay or on YouTube, and connecting our hearts with the heart of Gaia. And in that, just feeling our energies going deep into the earth, connecting in with the new earth templates, the crystalline matrices of energy, and with the crystalline heart of Gaia. And connecting our hearts to the heart of the sun, the central sun, the galactic sun. And connecting to the heart of Source Creator. And just visualizing that as all of our hearts connect around the globe, that we're creating a beautiful web of energy that goes all the way around the globe and goes deep into the earth, to the very heart of Gaia. So taking in a few more deep breaths, breathing in love, breathing out love. And with our awareness in our heart space in the center of our chest, opening our eyes whenever we're ready. Now, if anybody who's watching feels to share this video along, and I will do that myself in a second, that is really helpful if it's something that you're in resonance with. And it helps us with the Facebook algorithms as well. So my first question to you, James, is, because I know Pickering isn't necessarily the most forward-thinking of places, it's not necessarily the most spiritually aware place. So how does James Boag, born and raised in Pickering, end up being what? Tell me, if you don't mind telling me something of your journey to that. I'm quite curious as to how you got interested in yoga, where that started for you, and how that journey kind of took place.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Growing up here, um, I did sometimes feel, well, when I was, so many ways I could go with this, but when I was 11, I went to stay with a French family in the summer holiday from school. And I went there every summer. And I knew from the first year that at the first opportunity, I would be leaving Pickering to go somewhere far away. And I had a sense already at that point that I would definitely be going to explore beyond France as well. I had this, it was such a wonderful experience when I went to stay with this family in France because I really liked French and it gave me the different language. I had the experience that first visit. I'm experiencing myself differently. I'm able to access different feelings and different feelings, different perspectives because of this different language. And I just found that thrilling. And it made me kind of like, yeah, it kind of tapped into a curiosity, I guess. Um, I feel it's safe to say that I always had something of a spiritual inclination. Since I was a boy, I had a sense that there's something more than all of this that we see. There is a mystery, there is something that we might call God. Now, when I say God, in the Indian tradition, this is one of the things I love about it, is that I was taught at school that Hinduism, Hinduism is a word that it means different things to different people, but let's say I was taught at school as a polytheistic religion. But in the Indian system, and you could say Hinduism is the religious interpretation of Indian philosophy, perhaps, but in the Indian system, God is one, but God goes by thousands upon thousands of names to overtly remind us that the name is not it. The particular form or name is not it, because God, or whatever you want to call it, is beyond name and form. Because as soon as we name something, we limit it. So it's not that I had a sense of that was this grey bearded man in the sky. I had a sense there's something, there's something. And I had moments as a very young boy of just great, this feeling of mystery and the beauty of existence. And also this feeling, I had also moments of great sorrow when I was a young boy. I would just sometimes, I remember one time, I was just in my bedroom, just crying for the sorrow of the world. It's like, why do we make it so hard? What it could be so, this world is such a beautiful place. Why is it that there is such exploitation? Why is it there is such degradation? And so I think, yeah, as a young boy, I had something of an inclination. And then as a teenager, well, since I was a young boy, I loved playing sports. But certainly by the time I was 10, 11, I'd had my first, I didn't know of the names for it then, but I had experiences of samadhi or yoga or integrated awareness, playing sports, just getting into this flow state or into the zone, and everything else has faded away. And I'm fully present and I feel like elevated. I feel high and expansive. And it's like, wow, this is beyond. This is like, whoa, like this is experienceable. Wow, this is not normal. This is fantastic. I want more of this. And had experiences like this several, many times during my teenage years playing sports, but I had no control over when it would emerge. Those rare special days when you'd be in a state of flow on a basketball court. It didn't come reliably. And then playing loads of sports. So it'd been this grateful to sport because there was a body, there was some parts of myself that didn't have particular opportunity to be so expressed. But sport did allow me to channel a lot of energy in constructive ways and ways that helped me connect to lots of older people, so older and younger kids at school. And then I played basketball with a men's team. And I had a coach who was a very important kind of mentor when I was a young teenager. And But playing lots of sport, lots of the same sport particularly, created a lot of imbalance in my body. And my basketball coach, when I was 12, 13, she taught us to stretch, and she taught us like breathing exercises. And she even said some of this comes from yoga. So there were certain yoga postures that I was practicing since I was a teenager. And on a Sunday, for example, when I was from about age 13, maybe 12, certainly by 13, I would play basketball twice. In the afternoon, I'd go and do my own personal practice, shooting the ball and doing all, And then in the evening, I would play with the rest with it in the training session. And in between times, I would go to my room and I'd do all this stretching and deep breathing. And sometimes I'd try and meditate. And maybe I'd just seen it in a film, something, I don't know. And often on a Sunday morning, I would have gone to church. And I liked church. That's a beautiful church in Pickering, St. Peter and St. Paul, lovely acoustic. And I used to carry the cross or the candles in the service. And I appreciated the space of the church service, the music, the way that the song Eucharist at that time, Clive Wass, who I think he was the organist, and he had composed the music, and it was beautiful. And it was I didn't know this word for it then, but it was very meditative. It was, I didn't realize what was happening, but that space in my week, it was just giving me space to be with something that was not the day-to-day drive. And so this is Shabbat, yeah, it's a time to, although somehow we did it on a Sunday. I never understood why we made it Sunday instead of Saturday, but there was this pause. And so there'll be this quiet time during that church service, not that it was particularly prolonged, and there was the music. And then in the afternoon, I'd go and play basketball. It was a ritual. My coach gave me practices which became like, so I had a daily practice since I was, 12, 13 years old. And that also gave me it was also a bit like a meditation. I didn't think of it like that, but it was a way to disconnect from my teenage angst and connect to presence, and a place that was very refreshing and healing in many ways, and gave me a useful channel. But all that playing basketball on hard surfaces and doing the same motions again and again, and also being a student, I was hunched over a desk a lot. I didn't escape this, school. We all graduate experts at sitting in a chair or whatever qualification, and that's just so ravaging on the physiology. And then I went to work in Asia. So I studied languages, French and Italian, and I went to work in Asia. My first year at university was teaching Japan, where people sit on the floor a lot. And there I am, 22, 23, this young athlete, supposedly. And I go out for dinner with my Japanese teaching colleagues, and they all sit in the classic Japanese kneeling or cross-legged posture for 2-3 hours at this, big staff meal after the school sports day. And all of my colleagues who are 50, 60 years old, they all get up easily after sitting for 2 hours. I can only kneel Japanese style for a couple of minutes before I need to change to a cross-legged position. Unfortunately, I could still sit in a cross-legged position because I had practiced it a bit, like often at basketball, camp, you'd sit on the ground while people, and so I still did it a bit, and I've been doing all those stretches. But when I would get up after sitting in that same position for a couple of hours, I'd be getting up. This is the opposite of slow motion now. I'd be like, I'll be getting up really sheepishly, gingerly. And I realized as well, squatting to the toilet I could just about do it. But if I was, went to meet a friend I lived near the city called Kobe and Himeji. If I went to meet a friend there, I'd see often Japanese people just waiting in that the resting squat position. And I could do it for a minute or so, but I couldn't just hang out there. And I realized, James, well, something's wrong here. Like the natural position to evacuate my body is not easy of access. What's going on here? And then after that, I worked in Thailand, and again, I noticed that people. A few years I got into yoga much more there. I'd got a few injuries, and people have been suggesting I would really enjoy and benefit from yoga. some of my friends in Japan. I hadn't been to a yoga class, but once I got to Thailand, that just kind of happened. And then I got invited to this new yoga studio. And this was in the days when yoga studios, people hadn't really even heard of what such a thing. And I went to this class. It was fantastic, and I felt great. And then I started practicing what we'd done in that class every day. Because I already had a daily practice. It was just kind of adding. I've been doing some things that were very similar to that already, but it kind of, there were new elements I learned around the breathing and around working in both directions at once. So always, if you're expanding from the center, you're also feeding back into the center. So and I found there was this physical practice that really had this more spiritual aspect to it. And I just felt amazing at the end of the first class. And then I started to read, like, this is amazing. I want to find out more. And then I started reading more. And after a year or two, I went on a trip from that yoga studio in Bangkok. By that time, I was teaching at university there. So I didn't go to the studio much at all because I was too busy, but I did my own practice. But I knew there was one day I was near the studio, I just dropped in and they had this trip on, and I knew that weekend I don't have essays to mark. Often I would have my whole weekend would be marking essays. And so I joined this trip to this nice green place, a place called Kanchanaburi, west of Bangkok. And that morning we left early morning Saturday, and a man was walking towards me as we were waiting for the minibus. And this man then became my meditation teacher. And that evening he gave a talk on yoga from the point of view of Kashmir Shaivism. And Larry, he was called, he said, I always remember you, James, because your jaw was in your lap. It's like, yeah, it just felt like home, like this very inclusive vision of the yoga of Kashmir Shaivism and the lineage of Abhinavagupta, coming through the great master of the 20th century, who Larry was a direct student of, Swami Lakshmanju. It just really resonated with me. And so I carried on studying and practicing from there, kind of full on. Living in Thailand at that time, I loved my work, but I've always enjoyed physical things. And when I moved to the university in Bangkok, the air pollution is very, very bad. And I tried playing basketball outside, and your sweat would just smell of pollution. It was, and so then I just started doing a lot of basketball practice indoors, and yoga practice indoors, and studying. And then I was teaching at the university, and they had a Sanskrit department, and so with Larry, when he spoke about texts like Yoga Sutra and the Bhagavad Gita, they just came so alive. And I'd read a little bit in translation. I knew I wasn't getting it. But when he spoke about them, they just came to vivid life. And I knew from a previous experience with French and Italian that even between languages so close, like English, French, and Italian, if you translate a book, you lose a lot. It's impossible not to. And one of my very favorite books, and it's still one of my favorite books, an Italian book, I read it in English and I read it in Italian. It's like two books. They're both, I love them both, but there are certain episodes in the English translation that really stood out for me. Whereas in the Italian translation, that section, that's not the one, in the Italian, it's other sections of the text that really resonated more. And the flavor's a bit different. What they call in Sanskrit rasa, what you taste, what the feelings it evokes. So I knew that a language like Sanskrit was so different that unless I was going to be able to approach through that lens, it would be hard for me to have the type of relationship with the teaching text, with the wisdom in those texts that I felt from my time studying with Larry, I really wanted to have as a support in my life. So I had a senior colleague at the university, Bill Wharton. He was a US Marine captain in Vietnam. Save him from PD. And then he settled in with his wife, and he was teaching at university, and he studied many languages and translated many wisdom texts, but he'd been working on Sanskrit with Ajahn Tassani, this wonderfully gracious, beautiful senior teacher there at the university. She'd already been teaching, I don't know, 3-4 decades when I began working with her, but she's just a wonderful person. And she agreed to work with me. Bill introduced me and she said, yes, we can start. And then we started. And so for the first year was lots of grammar foundations. But then we started working on texts, and we started with Yoga Sutra because the language is relatively, the sutra form is very particular, condensed form. And then we translated some Upanishads and little bits from here and there as well, and quite a bit of Bhagavad Gita. And then I went to, I left the university after 3.5 years teaching there, taught yoga full time for another 14 months in time. Then I came back here before going to India. Does that answer the question a little bit, Denise?
Yes, it does. It does. Yeah. And I love how organic so much of that was as well, how things just kind of like came and appeared. And, you know, full respect to your basketball teacher as well, you know, if she hadn't done that, it's one of those things, isn't it? If you hadn't had those little keys.
Yeah, lots of little seeds for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, when I was first, before I moved to teach at the university in Bangkok, I was teaching at a school in a town called Chacheng Sao, east of Bangkok. And it was a Catholic school, which meant that it was a Catholic organization, and there were 3 brothers who were part of the staff. And then amongst their staff, you know, there were hundreds of teachers and there were thousands of students. Maybe 1% were Christian. But the brothers, and when I was teaching there, I was housed on site, and so very occasionally I would see the brothers, and one of them, I think it was on the basketball court one weekend. We were shooting around, and he asked me about my beliefs or my spiritual orientation in life, and this was when I was starting to get into yoga. And I explained to him that, you know, I had grown up with an exposure to Christian teachings in a very kind of relaxed Church of England, you know, no hellfire and brimstone or anything like that. None of that kind of guilt, or it was just very mellow. And you know, like I said, the music was nice, and but at school, in the first year at secondary school, we studied world religion. First 2 years, we studied all the major, what they called the major world religions. And the thing that struck me was the core is the same in all of them. It's like, be a good person in the sense of be respectful to yourself and to the other in the broadest sense. Respect other people, treat them how you would like to be treated, and treat the world and the planet how, you know, with respect and care and love. And so the teachings of Jesus that I was familiar with, I found great resonance in them. But there came a point when as I got to about age, towards the 6th form, and we're saying the creed, the Nicene Creed, you know, we believe in one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. And I just thought, you know, well, if I'd been born in a Muslim country, I'd be Muslim. If I'd been born in a Buddhist country, I'd be a Buddhist. And I don't believe in one holy Catholic or Apostolic Church. You know, the God I believe in would not discriminate depending on what culture you were born into. So I started to just, I can't go anymore. So I was explaining to this brother, you know, that I loved the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, but I had just a problem with the institutionalized, politicized, and he called it churchianity. And he said, well, for himself, he differentiated between churchianity and Christianity. And so he said, yeah, he tries to live the teachings of Christ. And I found that, like I mentioned, when I encountered the yoga of Kashmir Shaivism, it was a very inclusive vision. So Abhinavagupta, this great master of the medieval times, he says, all of the teachings of all the traditions make up the body of that supreme teaching. And this is how extraordinary Abhinavagupta is. You know, he says, we pay caste the merit it, we pay caste the attention it merits by paying it no attention at all. He's extraordinary, but that school or that method's very inclusive and universal, and that's what really made me feel at home in it and want to explore it much more.
So India came next?
Yeah, so I moved to India. Well, so during those times, so in the story of the arc of my life, so like I went to school, I went to university, then I taught in school for 3 years, and then I taught in university for 3.5 years. So notice a trend. I've been in school the whole time. So I was thinking, like, if I want to study Sanskrit, I've got to go and get a PhD. I mean, how does a person study Sanskrit in this world, you know? So I was already starting to think about where's the place to do that. And I thought, well, in the US, I know they have like quite good grad programs that involve Sanskrit. So that's what I started looking into and I applied. But along the way, I thought, well, when I leave Thailand, I'll take a year, because after I left the university, my last year in town, as well as teaching yoga full time, I was continuing to study Sanskrit more. And then I thought, yeah, I'll apply to the US. And then meantime, I'll also visit India. And so in January, I think it might have been the first, it was the very beginning of the year, 2008. Yeah, that's right. I went to India for the first time for a month. I was going to stay with a teacher. Well, I was going to visit and study with a teacher that I'd met at a yoga conference in Hong Kong. I just dropped into a class she was giving and I'd seen that her and her cousin, the way they taught was very kind of open. And she was a Sanskrit teacher. So I just contacted her and she said, yes, come, we can do something. So I went for a month, but I stayed for 11 weeks. And it just turned out that I stayed in her house. Because I arrived and there was no room at the inn, you know, like it was high season. This was in Mysore, South India, where a lot of people go to do various forms of physical yoga practice. And that was the high season. And so I arrived and she said, when you come, just come to the house. I went to her house. So she said, where can I look for a place to stay? So I'll go to this neighborhood. And I met lots of people. Oh no, it's full, 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 full. I go back and she says, well, why don't you stay here? My daughter got married last year. Her room is free. Do you mind sleeping on the floor? And in those years, I slept on the floor anyway. It's like, no, that's what I was expecting. And so I actually stayed with her in her family home with a big extended family for 11 weeks. Then I went to visit grad schools for a month, 5 weeks. I was back in the UK and went to the US to visit them. And then I went back to India for a further 9 weeks. And on that second visit, I knew that this teacher I'd worked with, she wasn't going to be around. She was going to be teaching overseas in the autumn. And a very good friend of mine in my first 2-3 years in Mysore, she was doing a PhD there. And her mentor, the guy who was guiding her, was the woman I'd been working with, Jayashri. My friend Anna's mentor was Jayashri's guru. And he's a Sanskrit acharya, and he's an acharya. It means it's like a revered teacher whose job it is to lead a community and demonstrate how to be in the world. So he had that role within his community, and they've been Sanskrit acharyas and within that community for at least 700 years, father to son. And so my friend took me to meet him, and he said, oh, don't worry that Jayashri won't be here. You will work with my son, Dr. M.A. Alwa. So then my third trip, I started studying with Alwa, and he became my main Sanskrit teacher for the master's program that after a while, so I was still thinking to go to the States. And as having visited universities there, I'd realized more and more, okay, I didn't really apply to the right one. I didn't know what I was doing about US grad programs. Then the final time I find the schools that are the best for what I wanted to do. And I also started working with another great Sanskritist in Mysore called H.V. Nagaraja Rao. And one day, this would probably be now 2009, I'd been to a class and it was just this amazing class. I thought, these are the pundits universities they would give their eye teeth to come study with in the university holidays with. And here I am, just on my bicycle, going to their house. It's like 10 minutes from where I stay in Mysore. So the third trip, I started staying in my own place that I rented. And I was cycling on. I thought, if I get accepted, I don't think I'm going to go. I think I'm just going to. This is where I need to be, because I don't want to study it to get a PhD. I mean, having a university teaching license would not be without use. But I was already starting to realize, because I was also giving courses on Yoga Sutra and Bhagavad Gita and Indian mythology to yoga students in Mysore. Like my first trip when I was staying with Jayashree, she would do Yoga Sutra recitation class 4 evenings a week. So I would be there. We would do class in the morning as well. And so I was there. And one day she was going to Bangalore, and I just said, "Oh, if anybody wants to come, I'll do kirtan tomorrow." And some people did come and they really liked it. And then they invited me to start doing that where they stayed in another part of town. And then during the kirtans, I might talk a bit about the mythology or the symbolism of what we're singing. And then some people who became my friends, they said, "James, why don't you teach? Why don't you put courses on?" I said, "I don't think people come to Mysore to study with some white English kid. And then some of my friends, they've been it's not coming a long time. They want us to do with somebody like you who can, because you make it really relatable for us. So seriously, people will come. Try, do it." So my next trip, my third trip, I did a kirtan as soon as I got back, and I was renting a place that I'd done a few kirtans in before. And at the first one, I said, "Oh," as I've been teaching courses on Bhagavad Gita in other places, in Thailand and Czech Republic, and so I said, "I'm thinking of doing a Gita course 2 or 3 afternoons a week. Would anybody like to come?" And then like half the people put their hands up. And so then I was studying Sanskrit with these two amazing teachers. And I was also getting a chance to share and kind of have community. I was giving kirtan twice a week at my place, and then having people come for courses as well. So I kind of realized, yeah, this is, and I wanted to study Sanskrit because I wanted to have that personal relationship with the practical wisdom that I really felt was encoded in these texts. I knew these were texts that I could have a lifelong supportive relationship with. And so I was, yeah, even if they let me in, like if they give me full scholarship, I don't even know if I'm going to go. And that very day, I got home, and when I opened the email account, uh, there was the notification from the university that had been the one that had been, that's the place to go, saying, "No, you're all right. We've not been able to give you a place." Okay. And then at the same time, both my teachers, independent of each other, said, "Why don't you do the master's program that's available here through the Open University?" There's an Open University called the Karnataka State Open University in Mysore. And they said, "Look, the work we're doing, it's all well and good. We're going through Gita and translating texts I was interested in together. But, if you really want to know Sanskrit well, it would be good to do this program." And they knew I'd been interested in doing a program in the States. And so then I enrolled for this master's program in Mysore. And I just studied with the same teachers and another younger teacher I also worked with a lot for 2 years when he was in Mysore. So for like 2008 to 12, I spent half my time there in Mysore, and then continued to go almost every year, including this year. But who knows what's happening next?
So for you, the kirtan, and it's maybe for those that don't know, if you could talk around what it is,
Yeah.
and also how you feel that's of benefit to people. And this is, of course, linked to the Sanskrit that you've been talking about, because I'll let you.
Yeah. So I always liked singing since I was a boy, and really, I don't think I sang as much as I would really have liked to. I think it was. I've been having this insight recently that so I go to various men's work things, men's groups, and we work with archetypes, particularly archetypes of lover, warrior, magician, sovereign. And I had this recognition that some aspects of the lover, and what does that mean? The lover means the one that connects with all of nature, all of reality, the one that is connects to beauty, the beauty of nature, the beauty of connection, and aesthetics and the arts and all those things. And I realized that as a young boy, some of my, let's say, aspect, like the beauty, like to sing, to dance, that wasn't really safe in the, like my sister went to ballet. If I'd gone to ballet, I would have been taking even at age 70, that was a big risk. I'm making myself a very easy target to be singled out for bullying. And when I went to in the junior school, everybody was in the choir, When I went to the second, I sang soprano songs and in the musical society. When I went to the secondary school, I was the only boy in the choir in the first year. Didn't stay in it very long. Just thought it's just too risky, And also the warrior energy, I'm a quite passionate person, and that angst was channeled through sport, but certain aspects of the anger that was there in me wasn't welcome. And I realized, that disagreeability as a trait is of great utility. I think it can be very helpful to support virtuous courage and to take a stand, like to be the only person to be ready to be the only person in a room who will not go along with a particular viewpoint is absolutely essential for human beings. So disagreeability is a very useful trait, but of course it's not particularly pleasant. So I just think in my childhood, some aspects of my warrior and lover archetypal self were not given as much encouragement or blessing or space or handled. It's not nobody's fault. That's just the way things were. So I didn't sing as much as maybe I would have liked to, but I'd still sang and enjoyed it. But I just sang in my bedroom or in the school corridors or, just with my mates a bit, but it wasn't something I really did, And I missed it, and I go into a concert when I'm at university, I'd be singing along, I'm loving all that, but it wasn't as regular or nourishing a part of my life. And then I found kirtan, so I'm getting into yoga, and I'd started doing this teacher training program. And it was the first time that the teacher had done that program. And consequently, before the official program started, we had about 4 months where it was like a pilot scheme. So we already started learning to teach yoga asana, but Adrian, the teacher, started practicing teaching allied material. And so he was going to share he shared all sorts of stuff that he was interested in that wasn't on the official curriculum. Quite a lot to do with Ayurveda and various other aspects of, let's say, the Indian system. But also he shared stuff about mantra and kirtan. And the first time I sang kirtan, so kirti means glory in Sanskrit. So kirtanam is an act of glorification.
Wow.
And so the idea is when we sing kirtan, it's a way to remind ourselves of the glorious gift of being an incarnate human being.
Wow.
The idea is in yoga meaning gathering or unifying or joining or connecting, when I bring all parts of myself into a gathered, connected, integrated state, how does that feel? It feels fantastic, yeah. It feels glorious. And so yoga techniques are designed to train us. So it's easy to stay balanced and congruent and integrated through the comings and goings and whirlings and ups and downs of the day-to-day. So in a yoga technique, if it's a meditar, the medi state. So cultivating the state of being centered and balanced. So when I do a meditation practice, I'm training myself in the ways of integration, and I'm attuning to what it feels like to be more balanced and whole. So a musician, once they tune the instrument and they get used to the instrument being tuned, the more they practice that, the easier they can catch it before it goes out of tune. So you see a great orchestra, before any movement, they tune up. And then they tune up in between movements. Maybe like the junior orchestra, they just tune up at the beginning of the evening. They don't need to do those fine tunings because they haven't got the ear for it. As the more we practice yoga, the more we realize, oh yeah, I'm getting a little bit out of balance here. And I notice myself coming away from my center a little bit quicker than I did before. Or I notice, oh yeah, I'm not really as, in touch with my whole self as I'd like to be. But once I notice I'm empowered, So kirtan is a very, in the yoga system, in the Indian system, sound practices are venerated. The whole manifest universe is sound made manifest. In the beginning was the word.
Yeah.
Everything's vibration. We live in space, but this space isn't empty. It contains particles that are vibrating, moving, pulsating, making some type of resonant sound. So when we work with sound, it's prized in the Indian tradition because it's so powerful, because it penetrates and it pervades. So when I start singing beautiful songs of spirit in any language, I raise my vibration. Reggae music, the beat is designed, it's spiritual music, it lifts the vibration up. And then some forms of pop music, they invert the reggae beat, so your energy goes down to the lower chakras.
Oh.
So one of my tantric masters, I learned this from him, but he'll actually demonstrate it to you. He will start playing, and you'll feel the whole room going in a certain way, and then he's very, very powerful and skilled at this. Like, wow! But the spiritual music, as in music, allows us to connect to wholeness and beauty. It raises our vibration. And when we do kirtan, that's the idea. Kirtan means, and kirtan doesn't have to be singing. Any activity that engages the whole human being in such a way that we get connected to the glory and beauty of life and the sanctity of existence, this could be called kirtan. So tending the garden could be an act of kirtan, like it can be an act of yoga. Cleaning your elderly sick relative's bath can be an act of yoga. It can be an act of kirtan. If you do it with that deep presence, it will take you into a space of relative fullness and wholeness. So the idea is, in yoga, let's practice fullness so we're less thirsty. So when we go into the world, we're less susceptible to be pulled here and there by the things that trigger our woundings or our lacks, because we've been actually cultivating healing and wholeness, health, wholeness. So this is what yoga is all about. So with kirtan, one of the things that I love about, and I like singing, so fair enough. But when we sing, it's almost difficult to avoid yoga, because when we sing, obviously it's a physical thing. So the bodily powers are recruited and engaged. There's a practice, and one aspect of yogic practice is known as pranayama, prana, life force, which we can experience in many ways, but also through the agency of the breath. Now, when we sing, the breath starts to refine and deepen. Singing can help us reconnect to our innate expert breathing capacities, but in a very organic, easeful way, without strain. So we're using our physical body, using our energetic body, the breath. So if it's often response, so I've got to focus on the words and the melody. So my mental faculties are recruited and engaged. And it's very sensuous, and all my senses are involved. I'm obviously listening to the music. There's a vibration I'm feeling. Maybe there's a flavor that I'm getting into as I'm singing and feeling. And I do it with an emotional intent. So very readily, this practice of kirtan is inviting my physical, energetic, mental, and emotional body or being, all these constituents, to come together and get attuned to the joy of what it feels like to be in a state of togetherness. So it's like I'm training myself in the ways of togetherness. So I do the singing practice, I feel good. And then as time goes by, I start to realize I'm feeling good, it's not because I'm singing. It could be something, I love singing, so let me feel good doing that. But it's not just singing. It's like when I got high playing basketball, it wasn't basketball. It was that basketball was the thing that was allowing me to be fully present, because within it, my physical capacities, my neurology, my senses, I'm focused mentally, everything's connected. So it's helping me experience deep presence. So as a boy, I get high, and then sometimes I go to play basketball. And I remember at university, like my flatmates, one day I come back from training, and one of my flatmates comments to me, "It really means a lot to you, this basketball, doesn't it?" And I obviously, I was just come frustrated. She's like, "Yeah, how do you know?" It's like, well, we can tell when you've had a good training session or not, like the way you come home. So with yoga, there's the idea that through practice, our access to a state of balance becomes a little bit easier. It's like we start to claim more responsibility for that, because we realize that it's not so much about what I'm doing, but how I'm doing whatever I'm doing. So I use a technique, so yoga asana, for example, I'm moving my body through space, but I'm really connecting to the elements within and around me. I'm using my mental focus. I'm also really relishing the breath, noticing the breath, noticing the life force. So it's a kind of an embodied prayer. Prayer and the Sanskrit word for prayer is so beautiful. There's different ways you can say prayer. There's many ways to say most things in Sanskrit, but one of the ways is prartha. Now, artha means the means, prartha to orient towards the means. So if I'm praying for peace means let me practice peace. Let me embody peace. Let me share peace. Let me cultivate peace. If I'm praying for health, let me embody health. How do I do that? Embody wholeness. Invite myself into a congruent state. So when I sing, I'm not just practicing singing, I'm practicing being in a cohesive, present state. So yeah, I do love that practice.
It seems an appropriate time to ask you, since we're on the subject, if you would like to, if you'd like to share any kirtan, if you'd like to.
I could. I think that would be maybe a nice thing to close with, Denise. Maybe just to share a song. Yeah, I'd be happy to if you'd like me to. Yeah.
Yeah, there's still more things I'd like to ask you though before
Yeah.
that. So a lot of the times when I happen to bump into you,
Yeah.
it's out in the woods.
Yes.
And yeah, so to me, being out in nature, it really feeds me. It expands my heart, seeing all that green, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
the color of your heart chakra, that really, it's like you're just breathing in all that green.
Mm.
And we are very blessed
Mm.
here in Pickering that we have some really beautiful woods,
Yes.
that people hear me going on about a lot because I spend so much time there. Um, what does that mean to you, like being out in the elements, because if I could spend all day out in nature, I would. It
Mm.
feels really, it feels really weird for me to be inside.
Mm.
When I lived in Australia for my first year, I was outside pretty much the whole time. I
Yeah.
lived in a tent for 10 months, and the backpackers where I had didn't really have doors. So even when you were kind of like undercover, the air was rushing
Mm.
through. So to me, it's really important to be outside and to be in nature. Um, yeah, over to you on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it just resonates so much, Denise. I mean, I would say I feel that, and I don't think it's just because I appreciate it more now, but I think Pickering is more beautiful than when I was a boy. The green is even more present. A lot of the trees, so where the woods that you love, Newbridge Woods,
Yeah,
they're much more mature now. A lot of the trees, and the whole floodplain that's different than it was before. And just in the town, a lot of the trees are more mature now. So I feel like all around the castle, the energy of the trees is much stronger than when I was a boy. It was a bit more uh, cementy when I was a kid around there. And now you really feel the energy of the green. I just even like the school field. As soon as I walk up to the school field, I see the green. It's like, oh, breathe, like you're just breathing that green. And I mentioned earlier, so when I lived in Thailand and I lived in Bangkok, one of my school friends visited me and he saw where I lived. He's like, how do you live here, man? And I lived off a 7-lane road, and my flat had one window that looked out to a wall. And that's where I would do my practices because it's so polluted outside. And then I taught in the yoga studio. But I spent a lot. The university campus is very beautiful. And I was either at the campus or at the yoga studio. So I just sleep here, like do my practices. But when I left Thailand and I came back here for a few months, leaving Thailand and then going to India, I was here for a few months and I went into the woods. I went cycling a lot and out, a bit up into Cropton Forest. And I realized, oh, yeah, I needed this. And then began a rehabilitation, which really deepened the first time I went to this place in Spain called Casa Cuadrado. So Danny Benito Poe, who created this retreat center, he came to some things I did in India one year and then invited me to go and teach at his center, which was not yet finished. But then the first year they opened, 2012, for yoga retreats, I think I taught the second and third retreat that they did there. And that first year when they were opening up, and there was still, it's very different to how it has been in the more recent years. And the center's grown and developed. And that first year, Danny took us on some hikes that I found quite painful. Like my joints were really, and then from that first year began this real rehabilitation of my connection to the elements, which has, I spent the first year I went there for like 20 days, I think. And Danny had said, when he told me and another guy, Felipe, the three of us spent quite a bit of time in Mysore. It was at the end of the season. There weren't so many people around, but we'd done a lot together. And Danny one day would come to my place to make food together. And then Danny wanted to show me and Felipe his project. And he said, James, you must come, but you must come for at least 2 weeks. And Felipe was like, well, maybe you can only come for a weekend. But really, you must come for 2 weeks. And the first trip was for 20 days. And I do remember after about 2 weeks, I started to feel different in my body. And I was moving differently. Then the next year I went for, I think, about 7 weeks in the summer. And then the third year I went for about 5 weeks again. And that third year, I really started to have a much more conscious, active relationship with the land, the beautiful land in the Spanish Pyrenees. And there's an amazing canyon, the Anisco Canyon, and the river. It's just so beautiful. But I started to have a personal relationship there with the elements. And in my own practice, the elements started to take on more and more significance. Around that time. My mum died 2013. And as she was dying, I think my connection to the motherland, I came back here a lot after she was diagnosed 2010. And my mother really liked trees and nature. And that's when it really started to accelerate from 2010, I guess. But then that time in the mountains, and in the mountains, when I was there, I would be outside most of the time as well. And that really accelerated that rehabilitation process. And so then when I went to Costa Rica last year, I've had the chance in 2015 and 17, I got the chance to go to Hawaii, which was amazing. And I just found the ocean so magnificent and so healing. And I knew I wanted to go somewhere to write my book where I could have that, because I knew if I'm going to write, for me to sit down and write hours and hours a day, it's not going to be easy. But I thought, if I go to a place like in Hawaii, I just wake up early and easily, and I find the ocean so invigorating. Like, if I'm in a place by the ocean, I know I can write 6 hours a day. I'll go to the ocean in the morning, go to the ocean in the evening. That's a very sustainable thing. And then I was invited to Costa Rica to teach, and I realized that this would be a good place to come and do that. But when I was there last year, it was just 75 days, and every day was just worshiping the elements. It was just so healing, the ocean. And my first visit to Costa Rica, I had this experience where I'd been to this place by the ocean, and it was my last day. I've been in this place maybe a total of 20 days, maybe during the visit. And on the last day, I'm really staying in the sea as long as I can. It's already dark, the stars are out, and I'm swimming the sea by myself. And it flashed through my mind, this would be nice to share with that special someone, But then I caught myself and actually, well, that's true. I am sharing this. I'm actually allowing myself to share it with myself and Mother Nature. I feel held in this ocean, and I am really celebrating Mother Divine here. I feel so grateful for this. And I don't need to share it with another human being in that way to feel awe and wonder and joy. And that was really another lovely healing thing. So last year when I went there to write, that just deepened further. And so I think the time in the mountains in Spain, where I was there weeks at a time, out in the elements much more, and walking, barefoot quite a lot, and then living, in Costa Rica almost barefoot the whole time, it just deepened that sense of connection. So like you, Denise, anytime I'm here, I try to go out into that green.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's really one of the things I so value in the Indian tradition, at least as it's come to me, is that this reverence for all of life.
Yeah.
And so I feel that, I mean, when I go to the school field, like with the school being more or less closed now, I often go up in the morning and do some movement up there. And my movement practice will include picking up quite a lot of litter. Um, I can't remember why would somebody on this green field, why do you just take it? There are bins not that far away. But I just feel that when a person really connects to beauty, it's like we can't do those things, those careless things. So one thing that's come up for me recently is this idea of aesthesia. Like our society offers us many types of anesthesia. So you can, like, for example, to veg out. This is it's a what's the correct word? A neologism. It's a new word. Human beings did not veg out through all our evolutionary history. Let's say, even just going back to agricultural times, you've done the harvest, you're working really hard, but then you just kick back and you're lying on the earth and you're looking up at the clouds and you've got your friends around you. And that rest is so restorative and so nourishing. And going, in our evolutionary history, would be times we do a lot of, maybe some days we walk all day and do loads of, or we're hunting, or we're gathering, or we're crafting, and lots of physical work. And then some days we just, we'll just be much more mellow. But it's really restful. And I think the busyness and accelerated nature of modern life means that, and the trauma that many of us experience because of, in so many ways, but also just because of the disconnection from nature. And I think we come out of the womb as an evolutionary product of our human heritage, expecting a village with 40, let's say 40 pairs of elders' eyes who are all going to be our aunts and uncles and all give us loving protection in those early years. And we're going to see green and blue and bright colors. We're going to see the colors, and we're going to see distant horizons and dense forests. We're going to see these things. And when we don't, it creates this great grief. And then obviously there's so many ways that people are traumatized these days, but society offers anesthesia, busyness, consumption. But the problem with anesthesia is that it separates us from aesthesia, separates us. Anesthesia literally means not beautiful. So for me, like, time in nature, I grew up here, but I didn't go into those. I used to run cross country through those woods, but I didn't actively seek out the woods. I wanted to be playing basketball. But what I've noticed is that when young people, because I've met some super inspiring young people in recent years who are just so connected to nature. And I feel if you get that connection, it makes it very hard to interact with yourself, because we are nature, we are born, and we're going to die. That's what nature is, nat, that which is born. It's going to die, and in between it's going to change. But I've met some super inspiring young people, and they have that strong connection to nature. And I think once we have that, it's much harder to perpetuate damaging behaviors.
Yeah.
It almost, nature's the guru, and she will ask us, she will invite us, she will show us where we need to clean up our act in relation to ourselves. But this is the beautiful thing and the powerful thing, is that once we start to clear up the shadow land of our own psyche, it does increase compassion and it does increase care for the external. So that's why I feel like yoga practice, it can be a very, when we do the down dirty work, going into the shadow, going into the down and excavating, we go into the grief and we get to praise, we go into the sorrow and we come out with the beauty. It's like once we learn that practice, and I think nature's once we start to observe and we start to connect to the cycles and the beauty of nature, I think it's just such a transformative teacher. And so healing to be in that. Yeah.
And my feeling on that as well is that there's an interaction, that there's a real connection with nature, and it's a two-way thing. I'll happily talk to the trees. I'll happily hug the trees. There's not many people around here that do that. Maybe a few more these days.
Well, Denise, when I was at school, there were quite a lot of girls in my year who they did it, and that we all thought they were crazy. But now, when I go into the woods, I'll also do that for sure. But it's interesting because I've done a few solo times over the years where I'll purposefully be alone for a while, and I've done personal retreats in the city in India where I stay. And I've done some here years back when my mum was still alive. My mum and dad, sometimes I would stay here. I'm in India, I've noticed I felt terribly lonely when I do that. Whereas when I'm out in nature, if I do a solo in nature, it's like, you can't be lonely in the woods. There's so much of life that is holding you and that you can be in conversation with. So yeah, and I feel that when we go out into a real natural environment, or the more, let's say, while that can be very hard to find, when we go into environments in which the symbiotic relationships of nature are more evident, it starts to invite us into that more and more if we allow ourselves to be present and in dialogue with it. And I think it's about allowing. We have to give ourselves space and permission. But the thing I find that's so inspiring, encouraging about yoga practice is that once we make that effort, it is its own reward. So if I invite myself to come out of fragmentation and into a bit more congruence, I feel better like this. If I make that effort to invite things to settle and come into connection, that was worth the effort. And if I decide I'm going to go out and spend some time feeling the breeze and feeling the temperature changing, as it can often here with the sun going behind the clouds, and I'll feel like the other day, so after an amazingly dry April and May, there's been some heavier rain, and so the other afternoon I was out in the rain, and it's like, it's lovely to feel that summer rain, because it's not that often here that it rains and it doesn't feel cold.
Yesterday was beautiful. I rode my bike and went with a friend to the woods near Hagwoods. I can't remember the name of them. And then when I came back, it was raining, and I wasn't ready to come inside yet. So I carried on riding my bike and went into the woods. And I got really quite wet by this time. I thought maybe I should have turned off and gone home. But there's a very small cave as you go into the woods, kind of on the right-hand side.
Denise, I grew up here, and Denise, you've alerted me to so many of these amazing places that I didn't know existed.
And it just felt amazing. I was wet, my hair was like soaked through, but I was so happy. And it was windy yesterday as well, but just to be out in the elements was amazing. And it really does, you do feel that connection. You feel that connection to Mother Earth. You feel that connection to everything. And it's a shame that kind of thing isn't taught in schools, really, because as you said before, if we learn that from an early age, it stays with you. Like, you can't really unlearn that kind of thing.
No, I have some friends whose young children as well, they don't go to a regular school, and then they're in different countries, but they really have that, and they're so strong in every way. They don't, like my friends with their parents, they say they're just not scared of the things that we are or we were, and they're so in tune with nature. This is the friends I'm thinking of in particular. One family lives in New Zealand, they have lived in Costa Rica for a while, but that family's moved, and in this restricted situation. My friend was the mother. She's been with her 3 children in an apartment in Mexico City. So the kids are like, they go by the window where the sunlight is, and they'll, it's all right, we get in that. But she says they're so resilient and adaptable because they are connected, and they had that. It's just in them so deep, and so I'm encouraged that I think it's not maybe infiltrated the mainstream as much as one would hope it will. When I was I was a school teacher and I taught universities, and one of the reasons there's many reasons I left, but I always felt like, well, I feel school should teach us how to live. It should teach us how to be in relationship to ourselves. So we should have proper physical education, like yogic physical methods, so to really learn about how to circulate energy in your body, how to balance your body, how to raise your energy, how to calm your energy, and martial arts and dance. These things that really help you learn an alphabet of healthy movement. And people who like sports, yeah, we can play sports, but sports aren't necessarily particularly healthy. Of course, there's lots of health benefits to running around, moving in all those ways, but a lot of athletes, it depends what sport you do, but it can have a lot of imbalancing effects in the physiology, especially things where and because you're sitting down in a chair so much at school, so I know many people who feel that school kills intelligence. And maybe you've heard of Sadhguru. He's a big public guru in India and internationally. And I heard him speaking about how school kills intelligence. And he gave this example of, they had a big gathering at one of his centers in India, and they had children from the rural areas, from villages, and children from the urban elite. And the event was held in this center that was built for adults. And in India, when you eat, you've got to wash your hands first. You're going to eat with your hands. But the hand wash station is made for adults, and these young kids, they can't reach. So all the city kids from these elite, highly educated families go to the best schools and they have the tutors. They all line up neatly, obediently, waiting for the adult to tell them what to do and how they're going to solve this problem of how to get to the hand wash. Meanwhile, all the village kids, they see this tap that's up there. So the biggest kid does this and gets all his classmates to climb up on him. And then once he's been the human stool for all his friends, then he gets some of his other friends to keep their hands off the ground, and 2 of them are kind of leaning against each other, and then he climbs upon them, and they all happily go and eat. Because they're connected to intelligence. They haven't had too much schooling. They haven't been boxed. And so much schooling, you learn this subject is in this box, but obviously life's not like that. So I felt like a school, we should learn to be in our body, and then we should learn to relate to other human beings, and we should learn to relate to nature. We'd learn how to grow food and make food. So for me, at school, we should grow the food and we should cook it ourselves every day. And the older kids teach the younger kids. And we should learn to make and mend things, skills to be a competent, confident human being. And hopefully this system that's been designed to help a person fit into into a box. So you can basically you can fill some slot in a production line or in some type of corporation. That will fade away and into obsolescence, and a new way of schooling will emerge. And I feel that's what we need as a planet, because I'm reading quite a bit of Charles Eisenstein recently. I don't know if you've come across this. I really recommend his work. So he wrote a book called The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. And he talks about the need to go beyond, to come out of the old story of division. And it's a lot in common with, let's say, my worldview. Yoga's about connection, integration. So we've got to come out of division and ism, schism.
Yeah, and separation.
Yeah, and Charles Eisenstein, but he's the book I'm reading right now of his, amongst several other books, is called Climate: A New Story. And so he talks about, rather than this focus on carbon emissions, we need to have a totally different relationship to our planet. And so it's a message that I'm very sympathetic to, but he presents it in a very cohesive and clear and I feel compelling and persuasive way. So, but I think that's what we need to do. And so, as I mentioned, my friends who have these amazing young children, and I was speaking with one of them the other day, and she was saying, "Yeah, but we've done a lot too. I mean, our generation, we might look at them and think, wow, man, I'm so far behind. My 8-year-old's such a great guru for me." But she was saying, like, but our generation, we've done important things too. Our parents had their work to do.
Mm.
And so what we've inherited, our responsibility is to heal what we can to facilitate the evolution of the next generation, to do things that would be beyond what we might have dared dream as possible. I think in the world today, it's easy to look out and see so many things that could make us feel despair or dejection. But I'm meeting young people who are doing amazing things, and I'm meeting lots of people who are actively living differently.
Mm.
And so to remember and to cultivate as best we can.
And I think to learn about emotions in schools as well.
Yeah.
That's we're just really just the tip of the iceberg now, kind of acknowledging that. And I think you wanted to speak about the power of love as well.
Yeah, I just thought, as I mentioned, so when you said love speaks love, so it's like just, so it's like yoga is a 4-letter word, and like lots of 4-letter words that get used a lot, its true reach and power has been a bit kind of gets ignored. And this is like love, like when people talk about the power of love, there's been so many songs that have even had that title. And for me, the real power of love it's embodied by an Indian yogic archetype called Ganesha. And Ganesha, Gana means group. It also means a member of a group. And Isha is the energy that can lead and unify. So Ganesha is the energy that unifies the group. And in the story of how Ganesha came to be Ganesha, we see forgiveness and inclusion and reconciliation of that which might seem like it would never have been possible to reconcile. And his form as well demonstrates this. So he has an elephant's head and a human body. Now, obviously, if you put like a huge elephant's head on this spindly little human body, it's probably going to fall over or even get crushed by the huge elephant's head. But Ganesha, he's able to dance. His elements are very graceful. So he has that gracious strength. And so his very form reminds us that often what we think is impossible, it's just a thought. And when we bring ourselves into togetherness, that which we thought was impossible, we realize it's not. And so this is a beautiful thing with yoga practice. Like with the physical practices, for example, sometimes people have the experience, oh, I thought I'd never be able to do that. But you practice and then you feel different. So, oh, wow, I'm able to do things I wasn't able to do before. Something that used to be difficult, now my body can do it and I feel easier. Oh, wow. Or I'm dealing with difficult emotions a little bit more skillfully than I used to. Oh, wow. Who would have thought that me, with my tendency to be reactive or to be too subdued, now I'm actually meeting life more how I'd really like to meet. Oh, what else could I do differently to my ideas? So for me, the power of love means the power of true presence. So if you love something, you are like, if you're truly friendly to something, you've got to be present. So to me, the power of love at a practical level means to be present. So it's the power of loving presence. And when we bring ourselves into real presence, we become greater than the sum of our parts. So when all parts of ourselves are in that glorious state of congruence and cohesion, we realize that our capacities are often greater than we would previously have even imagined. So sometimes very trying situations Like the Bhagavad Gita, this treasured text of the yoga tradition, it's set in the most stressful situation imaginable. There's a warrior goes out to battle. Normally he's very comfortable going out to battle, but now the rules he has lived by, the code he's lived by, is no longer vast or inclusive enough to deal with the challenge at hand. Because he sees around him the people who normally motivate him to go and fight for what he thinks is appropriate. But in this battle, his near and dear ones are on both sides of the battlefield. He just knows it's going to be devastation, destruction for all the people he holds dearest. So he doesn't know what to do. And so the setting is very significant in so many ways, but one way is it reminds us there's no situation that is a barrier to yoga. But really demanding, stressful situations, it's like they oblige us to show up more. When we're in a really tough situation, we will draw out, we'll have pulled forth more of our true capacity. But yoga practice means let me learn from pleasure as well as pain. Let me practice being present through all types of situation. And then when things are difficult, I will be able to navigate it a little bit more easily. And when things are lovely, I'll be able to enjoy them, but I won't get so attached to them. And so for me, the power of love is it's the power of presence. Because when I'm present, I've got more resources to work with and I'm more spacious. So it's easier to hold differing views and differing perspectives. It's easy to do one of the most basic yoga practices, which is to look in ways that reach beyond my habitual ways of looking, which isn't easy. But if I'm in a place of loving presence and wholeness, it makes it that little bit easier. So for me, the practical power, the power of love, rather than being some Hallmark card or some pop song or somebody that someone would just dismiss as woo or airy fairy, it's like, no. For example, let's say you're a parent and your son went off to fight in a war and you don't know if he's coming back. And after several years, your son walks home. He walks up the path to your home. You know he's coming. You know he's coming. How are you going to prepare the meal for him? You're not going to be multitasking when you're preparing. You're going to be fully into preparing for the beloved's arrival. How will that food taste? It's going to taste better, yeah? So whatever we do with loving presence, it's more its own reward. So even like, for example, human life involves drudgery. But the problem, like some people think, oh, if we create all these machines and robots to do all the drudgery, we'll be happier. No, we won't. We'll be happier when we learn to transform drudgery into beauty. So when we clean the house, but we make it an act of worship in the sense of I'm enjoying and relishing and noticing my capacity to move my body. I've got this gift of a human body, let me use it, and I move it appropriately, then even something that could seem like a drag can become its own reward. It's not that it's going to become maybe the top of my favorite things to do, but I can do it in a way that I actually appreciate the opportunity it gives me to access more my capacity for loving presence. And when I practice it, cleaning the house, cooking the food, tending the garden, talking to my family member with whom I might have the easiest dynamic, transformation starts to happen. And so for me, this is the love light transformation. Loving presence means bringing the light of centered awareness more fully into my day-to-day, and that is transformative. So I just feel the power of love. It's not an airy-fairy thing at all. If we practice presence, we do bring more of the light of centered awareness, and it helps us then go into the dark. It helps us go into the shadowland and heal. And so this is practically transformative. But it really works because when we do something with loving presence, it's its own reward. So it bolsters our faith, not a faith in something I believe in, but in a faith of something I practice. I know when I bring myself with loving presence into the present moment, yeah, it's different. It changes. I feel better. So it's worth making that effort. So my confidence or my conviction, let's say, in making that effort deepens, strengthens, and then it helps me It helps me, it prepares me, it fortifies me for going deeper into the shadow land, excavating more of the stuff down there that needs to be healed, and slowly transforming. So like growing up here, like up the road when I was a kid, one of my friends, Adam, he had some, I never had these toys, but he had some Transformers, Transformers, robots in disguise. So you'd have like the Transformer was a robot, but it was also like a car or a building or a house or something. Building is a house, but it was two things. But when it was a car and then you transform it into the robot, it's like the robot's inherent in the car and the car's inherent in the robot. It's like human beings, yogis in disguise. We have an amazing capacity for yoga because just think about it. We're made of the elements, earth, yes, water, circulating, flowing, fire. Yeah, I've got it's, I've been fasting, but still the digestive fire is still there. And air's coming in and out. I exist in space. If I put here, I've got some water. If I put something solid in here, like I had a cayenne pepper drink, if I put the cayenne pepper in, what's going to happen? It's going to all sink to the bottom. It's going to separate. But does the earth and water separate here? No. Have an amazing capacity for yoga, for holding together things that seem like they wouldn't necessarily hold together very well. But we do it day to day. So we've got an amazing capacity to hold things together that seem like they could never be happy together. We do have an amazing capacity to reconcile things that would seem impossible to reconcile. And when we practice loving presence, we start to reclaim that capacity and reconnect that deeper capacity.
Wow. Thank you for bringing everything together there. And yeah, so beautifully expressed in that as well, and very clearly. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Denise.
And so only to ask you before I ask you to do to bring in some kirtan,
yeah.
If you would like to just say how you're available to people. I know you've got a lot of online work. I don't know if you have anything coming up, or if there's things, if people want to. I've put your Facebook page, the yoga page, and your website on this already.
Yeah.
So people
maybe
know.
what I could do, Denise, is I could send you a couple of links to the YouTube stuff, so that like
Yeah.
with a couple of playlists that I might direct people to if they just want to kind of get started to get a bit more acquainted with the work. So jamesboagyoga.com is my website, and there's a James Boag Yoga YouTube channel. I've just started a new series called the Yoga Top 40, which uses pop song titles as a platform to talk about practical yoga philosophy, but in a really, just in 10-minute videos kind of thing. So the idea is it's nice and accessible, a digestible chunk. And then just recently I made a quite big, not big, but like it's several hours playlist called, I think it's called April 2020. Or What is Yoga 2020? And there was a training program I normally speak to in person, but we couldn't do that. So we shifted it online and we made videos for the students to watch before we had the online gathering. So there's quite a lot of material there, and there's stuff on yoga anytime. But yeah, I'm doing now online courses, currently a Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 course, which is full. That will run till kind of mid-July. I'm doing a meditation evening next Wednesday. It's basically about some of the people who've been participating in the course I've done recently. I've asked about having a start the day practice like meditation or prayer. What are some resources I can use beyond the ones they're already familiar with to really kind of orient towards the day, like to practice, like sort of, I often talk about yoga teachers to practice how we want to feel. So some practical ways to do that. So that's next Wednesday, the space on that. And then I'm hosting a poetry evening next Friday. And I'm doing a kirtan on the 21st. So those are all things people could come to. I might need to update my website. I think they're all there. I'll check. I sent out a newsletter this week, and so if anybody wants to contact me to be on my newsletter, that's the best way to know about things. I'm not the most active on the social media channels. I try to make a bit more effort about that in recent times. Yeah, and so typically this time of year, I was supposed to be in Israel in the month of June teaching some courses, and in recent years I've gone to Spain at this time of year to teach in the mountains. But I've been really blown away by the rich depth of sharing that's possible through Zoom, and so the online course has been wonderful because it's allowed groups for us to work together over several weeks and months. So some of the people that are in the course now, I've done a month of April, a month of May, 2 different courses, meeting twice a week. This course meets 3 times a fortnight. And I think in the autumn, I'm going to run like a term of teaching 2 courses in parallel. So people who want to commit to 2 evenings a week can, but it also makes it, maybe people don't have as much time, they can commit to 1 evening a week. And one on a yoga text and one on a theme-based yoga foundation series. So all of that I'm really excited about sharing. So yeah, people write to me at james@jamesboagyoga.com to get on the mailing list. And then hopefully before long, I'll be able to do live things again. But I just get the impression that gathering where we sing and breathe deeply and touch each other and move around in unpredictable ways are kind of the last things that will get the green light. But maybe I'll do a kirtan in Pickering again before too long. Maybe even an outdoor one. Somebody said, "Oh, let's do an outdoor thing." So, yeah. But the website is the best, and to get on the mailing list, that's the most reliable. Yeah.
Yeah. The website is on. So your YouTube, James Boag Yoga. I'm just going to put it in the comments.
I'll send you the links though, Denise, so you get them right, because it'd be nice for people to get like the Yoga Top 40 and there's 2 recent plays that would be a great place to start, because there's quite a lot of, let's say, disparate things. There's quite a lot of songs, there's various talks, there's some movement stuff. So if people can explore that, and I'd like to put more movement stuff, but I need somebody else to film me and 2 cameras and all that type of stuff. So just me speaking to camera, it's easy for talks and for songs and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, maybe, maybe you could just stick it in the comments on this, because I've tagged you in this live.
Okay.
So maybe that might be the easiest way, just to put those links straight in the comments.
Should I do that right away after this?
Yeah, if you could,
okay.
That'd be awesome.
That should be possible.
Brilliant. So would you like to finish on a song, please?
Yeah, and I would like to sing an English song that it came through this year in January in Mysore, and it's called Remember, and so it really links to what we were speaking about in terms of remembering and this connection to the earth. So this is the song I'd like to sing, Denise. That's the one that came up, and I think when I saw you that day, it's quite a few weeks ago now. It's the time when we were both in the out in the floodplain.
Yeah.
I thought, yeah, it'd be nice to share a Sanskrit song, but this is the song that I feel is really most appropriate. So for today and for what we've spoken about. So
perfect.
Should I just sing it?
Please do.
Okay. Remember, 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 you are not alone. Remember, 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 we all share the same home. Remember, 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 no one of us is alone. Remember, 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 we're all children from the same home. The earth, she is our mother. The soil, the sea, the whole. The sun, our father, is the very light of your soul. The earth, she is our mother. The soil, the sea, the sky. The sun, our father, without his rays we die. Remember, 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 We all come from the womb. Remember, remember, remember. Really, we're all one. We all come from the same place. We all share the same earth. May we walk here with kindness, bring to life the gifts of our birth. The earth, she is our mother. May we walk here with grace, make all our actions sacred, lending beauty to her face. Remember what we're here for, remember why we came, remembering our real identity beyond any name. The sun's the living witness, the source, the real true friend, shining, vivifying from beginning to the end. No human being's an island. Our actions, they reach wide. Though we may like to blind eye, there's really no place to hide, because we're all of us connected. We're all part of the whole. We are in this together. And for she is our mother. She wants us all to thrive, working all together for the good of all that's alive. Now I've seen some people thinking I just take care of myself, but we seem to be forgetting the nature of that real self, because we're each a microcosm, a conglomeration of cells, a living cooperative, functioning pretty well, and all the parts belong to one whole. Isolated, they won't stand, but when we come together, we begin to understand that the earth, she is our mother. The soil, the sea, the sky, the sun, the light of consciousness. Without those rays we die. So remember, 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 we all come from the womb. Remember, 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 really we're all one. We all come from the same place. We all share the same earth. May we walk here with kindness, bring to life the gifts of our birth. The earth, she is our mother. May we walk here with grace, make all our actions sacred, lending beauty to her face. Remember what we're here for, remember why we came, remembering our real identity beyond any name. So remember, 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 you are not alone. Part of the web of existence, we all share the same home. Remember, 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 no one of us is alone. We're really one great family. We're all children of the same home.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Denise.
Now, just quickly ask, yeah, have a look at the comments, because there may be something you want to comment on.
Okay.
But Michelle Campbell, who has just completed a yoga, I know she has just completed a yoga teacher training course in the States, is asking, can occasion be held on Zoom? And I know there's problems with the harmonium, but if the
so I've actually yeah, in March I did my first classes. There were like practical philosophy things, then text satsang stuff online. But there was one week about a month or 6 weeks ago when 3 different people. I've been feeling I'm missing singing with other people. And then 3 different people asked me if I might do a kirtan online. And I thought, how will that work? Because, normally we sing together and our voices become one sound. But I thought, no, let's just try it. So, because in some of the satsang classes I've been doing, we've been singing 1 or 2 songs. So I thought, yeah, and people have been like, yeah, it's great. It feels a bit strange to me. Once I get into it, I love it. So, oh yeah, let's do it. So I did the first one. And it was really lovely because we had people from, I think, 4 continents and loads of different places. And then so I did a couple, and then people said, no, let's keep doing it. And so I'm doing the next one on the solstice on the 21st, so 6:30 p.m. UK time on the Sunday till 8:15. So what we do is everybody mutes, and on my computer, the harmonium, it just doesn't really come through nicely. So we just do a cappella. And sometimes depending, I have a friend, Jimmy, who he plays guitar, and with the guitar, it sounded fine. And he sometimes does a little bit of like gentle percussion. That sounds cool as well. But even if it's just a cappella, I used to do kirtan a cappella for years before I learned to play the harmonium. So yeah, we just do it like that. So we sing along on mute, but we sing together. So I'll start singing, we just join in, and in call and response, I just join in, or we sing the song together. And I've been also really amazed how joyful it is and how we can also feel that connection. So maybe, do you say Michelle? Maybe she can join on the 21st. And most welcome. Just ask me for the link and I'll send you the link to join. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, James. This has been
Thank
really,
you, yeah.
it's been really amazing, really informative, and good to have that kind of the philosophy of yoga, really. The way that you've explained it has been amazing, and there's so much more to it than people realize. So thank you for touching on that in so many different ways.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I mean, you can probably tell I love this stuff, so I'm always happy to share with people who are interested. And yeah,
thank you. And thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who has watched us.
Yeah, thank you.
Michelle would love the link, so I'll let you two connect with each other. Yeah, thank you to everyone who's watched live, who's watched on the replay, and who will be watching on YouTube as well. If anyone is interested in these shows, if you haven't already, there's a Love Speaks Love Facebook page that you can like and then follow, and keep an eye on my page as well for future shows. And thank you, James.
Thank you, Denise. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
I'm sure I will see you in the woods again soon.
Yeah, and give my regards to your mum. And I hope she likes the song. I think she will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take my iPad through so that she can watch this.
Lovely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop the live stream. Thanks, everybody. Love, love, love.
Bye.